Welcome to our deep dive, and today we're tackling speed, but specifically how it's taught in primary mathematics. We've got some really cool material here from Open Educational Resources, Open Source Physics at Singapore. So are you ready to unpack it with me?
Absolutely. It's a fascinating look at how digital tools are changing the way we teach.
Yeah, this website isn't just a static page. It actually features an interactive simulation,
Yeah.
so you can actually see how speed works in action. It uses two objects moving between two towns.
And that's what's key here, especially for younger students, visualizing it. Because
Oh,
speed can be kind of an abstract concept,
for sure.
but this way you can see it, you can manipulate it.
I know, I got really intrigued when I saw this. I noticed the web page uses something called EasyJavaScriptSimulation, and it includes tags like length and time, so I'm kind of curious, what's the connection between those elements and teaching this concept?
Well, think of it this way. JavaScript, that's like the engine that makes the simulation run. The user can change the distance between the towns and the time it takes each object to travel, and of course, length and time.
Hmm.
Those are the essential components of calculating speed.
Yeah.
So in the simulation, when you manipulate those variables,
Yeah.
you can see how they impact the speed of each object.
So you're basically watching like a dynamic equation unfold.
Precisely. And it helps students,
Yeah.
move beyond just memorizing a formula. They can actually experiment, test different scenarios, and develop an intuitive understanding.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's more to this website than just the simulation. There's an about section and an intro page.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe those offer some insights into the creator's thought process and
The goals behind
the
it.
goals behind it. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Understanding the creator's intent is always helpful.
Absolutely. And there's even more. There's a list of other resources. There's a link to a Java applet on speed from NCTM, which is,
Yeah, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics.
yeah,
That's a very well-respected organization in math education. So it's great to see them linked here.
for sure. It kind of adds a layer of credibility to this whole website. And then there's this link to a tool for calculating distances in Singapore.
Now that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That brings real-world context into the learning. Instead of just theoretical distances, students can explore actual routes, maybe even plan hypothetical trips
Oh, that's cool.
using different modes of transportation.
Yeah, it makes the concept of speed relevant to their own lives. I can just imagine students debating, the fastest way to get from A to B.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
the kind of engagement that really solidifies understanding.
Exactly. When you can apply it to a real world scenario,
Yeah.
it becomes tangible, it's meaningful, it's not just an abstract idea anymore.
Right.
And speaking of real world, this website highlights the collaborative nature of this project. It credits several individuals, Sze Yee, Tina Tan, and Looking Ying. It seems like a great example of the open source movement.
Definitely. The power of shared knowledge and collaboration. They saw a need and came together to create something really valuable.
Now, there's one more link that caught my eye, the app link. I'm wondering if it takes those interactive elements even further, maybe a more immersive experience, perhaps even augmented reality or
Maybe, yeah.
gamification. Yeah,
It's definitely worth exploring.
it is.
Those dedicated apps often open up a whole new world.
I think so too. But before we jump ahead, let's dive into the heart of this website, the speed simulation itself. So can you kind of paint us a picture, like what's it actually like to use this simulation? What would they see, what would they do?
All right, so imagine this. You're looking at a screen, and you see two towns, maybe with little illustrations, just to make it fun.
Yeah.
And between those towns, you've got two objects that are ready to make the journey. These could be, cars, bicycles, runners, whatever moves. And the cool thing is, the student gets to control things, like the distance between those towns, and the time it takes for each object to travel.
So it's like setting up your own little virtual race.
Exactly. You can tweak the variables, maybe one town is further away, or one object gets a head start. And as you adjust those distances and times, you see the speed of each object changing right there on the screen.
So if one object covers the same distance, but in a shorter time, the simulation would show it moving faster, right?
Absolutely. It really brings that relationship between distance, time, and speed to life. Instead of just a formula, students actually get to see how changing one thing affects the others.
That's so much better than those, static diagrams in textbooks, the ones I remember.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Interactive tools like this, they just offer so much more.
Yeah. It makes me think back to that distance calculator for Singapore. Remember we talked about that? Pairing the simulation with a real-world tool like that seems like a really good way to,
Yeah.
to help kids make those connections
Right.
between the abstract concepts and real-life applications.
Absolutely. Imagine a classroom activity where they use the simulation to understand how speed works. And then they use that knowledge to plan a trip using the distance calculator. They could figure out travel times for different routes, different modes of transport, maybe even factor in things like traffic.
Or different speed limits.
Exactly. It takes a math lesson and turns it into, like a dynamic exploration of their own city.
And that's when it really clicks.
Right.
Speaking of clicking, I keep going back to those tags on the webpage. Easy JavaScript simulation, length, time. It's like they've given us the recipe for understanding speed right there.
Yeah, it's a great example of how technology can enhance education.
Yeah.
They've combined the interactivity of JavaScript
Yeah.
with those core concepts of length and time. And they've created a really visual, dynamic representation, which is perfect for young minds.
And it opens up so many possibilities. We've been focusing on, these two objects traveling between these towns. But couldn't those same principles be applied to other situations?
Oh, absolutely. That's what makes a well-designed simulation so versatile. It's not just about teaching one specific thing. It's about fostering a way of thinking,
Right?
a problem-solving approach that
Wow.
you can use for lots of different examples. So instead of cars between towns, imagine applying those principles to
Yeah.
the orbits of planets around a star.
Or even something closer to home, like how fast information spreads online, like when a news story goes viral,
Right.
or how trends catch on.
That's a great example. We talk
Okay.
about things going viral, but there are actual mechanisms at play there that determine how fast that information travels. A simulation could really help explore that.
That's so cool. It's amazing how these same basic principles can be applied to such a vast range of things. It really shows that learning about speed, it isn't just about plugging numbers into an equation. It's about understanding this fundamental concept that, really affects so much of our world.
Exactly. And this simulation, it's meant for primary students, but
Yeah.
it gives us a glimpse of this powerful way of thinking that we can apply way beyond the classroom.
So for those listening out there, why should you care about this website and this simulation, even if you're, not teaching primary math?
Because it's a good reminder that even complex ideas often have really simple principles at their core. You know this simulation. It boils speed down to its essence: distance, time, and the movement of objects. And whether you're a student, a teacher, or just curious about the world, understanding those principles gives you a framework for analyzing so many things.
It's like they've given us this key to unlock a whole new level of understanding. And it all starts with that simple but powerful visualization of those two objects moving between those two towns.
And what's exciting is, this is really just the starting point. We've talked about how those principles could be used for so many different scenarios. The movement of planets, the spread of information online, the growth of populations, traffic flow. All these things can be analyzed through the lens of speed, distance, and time.
It's a good reminder that learning isn't just about facts. It's about developing a way of seeing the world, a framework for understanding how things work.
Exactly. And resources like this website,
Yeah.
with the simulation and all the other tools they provide, it's a great starting point for that journey of discovery.
So we really encourage you. Explore the links, the resources we've mentioned, dive into that simulation, play with it, see how those principles come to life. And as you do that, we'll leave you with this thought. What other things in your life or your work could you understand better by looking at speed, distance, and time? What new insights could you find by looking at the world through that lens?
Keep exploring, keep questioning. There's always something new to discover.
And until next time, happy deep diving.